Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we do what we always do. We'll cover all the home teams, talk about the Saints, LSU Tulane. We'll talk LSU Tulane and UNO basketball and baseball. We'll also, again, talk about what's going on with the New Orleans Pelicans. We get a chance, we'll also introduce you to, again, the Gold as they start their season this year as well. A lot to break down and one of the best we have around. Ricardo Lecompte of Channel 4 Sports is our guest today. Ricardo, welcome back to the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm great, Eric. Thanks for having me back. It's been a minute. Yeah, we haven't done this in a minute.
Right. Yeah, one-on-one.
Right.
It's good to have you, and of course, we always like to start off the show. Tell us a little bit about all the great programming over at Channel 4.
That's right. We're at like the heavy season where we've got all the crossover sports. So we've got basketball, baseball, you name it, like starting, even the NOLA Gold starting right now. Right. So we try to wrap all that stuff up on our Sunday night show, 4th Down on 4, 10:35 on Channel 4. Just great stuff that we have with Doug, with Seth, with myself, all the stuff that we're putting together for that. And then, of course, all the weekly sportscasts that we have at 5, 6, and 10 o'clock. So we're not lacking content now in this part of the season.
It is I was talking to someone the other day. People don't realize it is the busy season right now. We got all these sports that are overlapping.
Yeah, it's this and October where you have like when football messes with like the basketball starts, both college and the NBA. It's like these two times, but this is also the best time just because you have so much to talk about and there's so much that's going on.
No doubt. Let's start with the Saints. Clint Kubiak is the new offensive coordinator. They have changed their offensive staff. Your thoughts on what the Saints have done thus far in terms of the coaching staff?
Yeah, it was something that was necessary that the Saints had to do in terms of just kind of reinvigorating this offense. I know that they finished the season strong with how Derek Carr played and how the offense seemed to have gotten in a rhythm, but you felt like, Pete Carmichael they were going to depart from that, and we've talked about that numerous times where they had to do something with the offense. Clint Kubiak is the choice that I think a lot of football people, if you're trending toward how the offenses are going in the NFL, anything that's an extension of a Kubiak, Shanahan tree, you're moving in that direction. That's how all these offenses are going. So it seems like this is the logical hire for the Saints to go in that direction. And what you're expecting this season, of course, you have to first start with Derek Carr in the quarterback situation. Derek Carr is going to have yet another offensive coordinator in as many years. Right. So it's how do they get on the same page and how quickly he can pick that system up. And there are principles of what Kubiak does run that Derek Carr knows because, again, he's been under so many offenses. Right. There's a lot of crossover and a lot of carryover. So we'll see how that marriage meshes. And then you just want to see what the Saints do in terms of play calling, and that's the biggest thing. There wasn't as much creativity with this offense last season in terms of using play action, using motion. That's what this team needs to do more, especially when you have the speed, when you have weapons like Alvin Kamara, getting him in those choice routes one-on-one. And we're going to see how that all predicates itself when it works out next season. I think one of the biggest things offensively that the Saints have to do better that they didn't do last year was run the ball. Right. That's what's going to branch off to all of the stuff. Right? It is. This offense has always been predicated on running the ball, having a threat there first, and then when you add a Kubiak system, which when you've seen how they work off play action with a lot of those offenses, if they establish that run first and get it going, then that's what opens up a lot of that creativity in terms of the play calling. So there's a lot of things they need to work in the offseason on that, but you're taking the right step in terms of moving this offense into the direction that the rest of the league is going.
Last year it was the defensive staff that was replaced. This year's the offensive staff that was replaced. Again, there's a mixture of veteran coaches and young coaches. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and it's funny because you were going to overhaul the offensive staff, and whether you had Joel Thomas leave as the running backs coach, or you're adding other guys in here, maybe like a Rick Dennison on the offensive line. You're getting rid with Doug Marrone. You like the mix of just old and new in there on the offensive side. It was funny. There was no moves really on the defensive side, and Dennis Allen talked about that yesterday in terms of what he was seeing, defensively. And granted, there were things that this defense didn't do well. Rush the passer, some of the run defensive issues that they had all season long. So it felt like, from what at least Dennis Allen was saying, it wasn't so much that he needed to tinker that coaching staff. It's just some of the things they had, with the players and what they have on this roster. I still think could be a good defense, but yes, certainly there's a lot of things that they need to address in terms of free agency, in terms of draft, to just bolster this defense. But as you could, I think from the end of season evaluations that they had with the team, they felt like they didn't need to make any moves really defensively on that staff. But yeah, there are things that defensively that we're probably going to dive into that they need to fix.
No doubt. Now on the offensive side of the ball, this offense, again, as you mentioned, predicated on the run, which again is really the base of it, with again a lot of eye candy that again that we've seen that the NFL's gone to with motion, etc., that we didn't see a lot with the Saints until maybe game 12, right?
Yes.
To me, and I'm sure to most, that again when you start looking at this, if Alvin Kamara is here, to me he's the guy that may benefit the most from this offense if again this offense is run correctly. Your thoughts?
And I agree with that. I think he's the one who stands to benefit from having a Clint Kubiak system, and maybe he just wasn't, when you think about Kamara and his usage, maybe for the last 2 years, he wasn't being used probably as best as he could be. And I think the biggest thing we were saying was, like, he's got to be much more of a pass threat, especially in this offense, because that's what he does well, because it is a matchup nightmare when you get him one-on-one with any linebacker, and how effective he is running those choice routes. That's where you've got to get him in there. Now, I think, with injuries and everything else, in terms of getting him as a run threat, you didn't see that burst as we've seen probably in previous years with Kamara. There were flashes of it this season when you saw it, but I think we went through most of the season where you were like, man, his longest run of the year was around 14 or 15 yards at like certain points of the year, where it was like he's not, getting those yards at a clip.
Age or injury?
It may be a combination of both. We always have this like baseline of where we put running backs in the NFL. It's about that 29, 30-year-old range, and it's more because of the usage. And when you get to a certain yardage mark, let's say 8,000 yards is that mark, generally on the other side of that, running backs are falling off. Like, that's just what it is naturally. He's been such a threat both ways that I don't feel like he's taken the beating as most traditional running backs have. So I think he still has that burst and that freshness to be a threat in the run game as well. Now, I think maybe there is a combination of maybe the offensive system and what they were calling for him wasn't as conducive last year, and maybe that's why you haven't seen the numbers in the run game. I don't think it's necessarily I'm going to trend in the direction that Kamara is falling off and he's getting on that other side of that 29-30. I think it's more he still probably has the freshness of the legs, but maybe as we, when you get back to your original point, maybe a Clint Kubiak system does revitalize that, not only in the passing game, but maybe in the run game as well, and utilize him better.
Yeah, that's where I land. I really think, again, it has been about the system, the lack thereof of a consistent offense for Kamara to be successful. We've seen his frustrations over the last couple of years. So, again, maybe in this offense, which again we've seen what it's done for McCaffrey's career as well. Those guys are the same, I believe, the same age, came out around the same time.
Right, they did.
You know, so again, when you talk about tread on the tires, and he's been probably more injured than Kamara has in his career.
Yeah, and I would also say too, with the 49ers, I think that offensive line is better.
Absolutely.
In terms of what the Saints
Which is where I want to go next.
And that's, I think, would help Kamara better, where they've got to address some issues here on the offensive line in terms of getting better in that run scheme, because there's going to be a lot of zone blocking kind of scheme stuff that this offense is now going to have to do. So you've got to address that in terms of getting better there up front.
And Dennis Allen did say yesterday in his press conference that they do a lot of the zone blocking, etc. But again, when you look at the body type of again the linemen that played this system, from Kubiak to Shanahan, all the way through those trees, it is more of an athletic lineman.
Right.
Now again, Trent Williams is kind of maybe the anomaly there when you talk about San Francisco being that big tackle. Penning is a big tackle. Ramczyk is a big tackle. Do you have the guys on that line now that can play this style? Because again, are they athletic enough?
Yeah, and that's where they're trying to upgrade in terms of being more athletic. And I think that's why they haven't sold the boat yet on Trevor Penning at left tackle. And even when Dennis Allen was talking about Trevor Penning yesterday, he was saying that he should now get a full off season to finally be healthy. Remember, he missed most of his rookie season last year, and then he missed the off-season training program recovering from that foot fracture that he had as a rookie. So this is the first season that Trevor Penning is going to have a full off season of workouts, of being in there for the mandatory mini camps, for OTAs, and then let's see how that development goes. Because if they can get a Trevor Penning that is, performing at where he can be, you've got a big athletic tackle there. That could be, not saying he's Trent Williams, I'm not even going to say that, but at least you have somebody that has that, that edge that you have in the run game, because that's what he does well, is that run blocking. And he does have that athleticism where he can improve in being a pass protector. I think with the Ryan Ramczyk situation, that's going to be the tricky part, because again, he had a minor procedure to clean up that knee. So they didn't have to have major surgery.
That's good news.
It is good news. The fact that it's still a deteriorating knee.
Right.
So you don't know how many more years. It's all going to be pain tolerance and how long he can, manage that stuff, because you saw what they did last year. It was every Wednesday he's not practicing. They've got to manage that where he's got to have that rest, have that extra day, then get him back in there. But if he doesn't have any setbacks with that knee, then you have that athleticism at that right tackle spot, and then you just have to fill up in the middle. I think Cesar Ruiz has played better, so that's fine. Eric McCoy has been very good at center. And then I think it was a surprise when you had Andrews Pete, who filled in when he went from guard and then switched over to tackle with Penning. It's interesting what you're going to do there, but certainly.
Do you think they can bring him back? Because again, I think he may have more play on the open market now. The fact that he's proven he can play tackle again.
Yeah, I think this is where they're going to address tackle in the first two picks. And I think
would agree with that as well.
I think that's what they're going to do.
I think they have to.
You have to. And again, it's because you have Ryan Ramczyk. You don't know how many more years you have with that knee. And again, you also have, yes, Andrews Pete could be someone that could be a desirable person for somebody else to kind of pick up, and you can get some type of compensation.
Because he can play multiple positions.
He can, and he showed that. And again, he was probably the unsung hero on that offensive line when he kicked out the tackle
last season. I was shocked, but I would agree.
Yeah. But yeah, I think they're going to address tackle in those first two rounds, and that's the direction they're going to have to go to. Again, to get younger, to get athletic, and also to have those options there. But yeah, you still have James Hurst also as well that's been quietly very good at guard and also been another versatile piece. So I think the potential is there for this offensive line to get better. I think it does start with Trevor Penning, and then they have to find another tackle in the draft.
Yeah, I would agree. When you look at the tight end position, which is a big part of this offense as well, do they have the personnel to play this system as it stands today?
I would say maybe that's an upgraded position they need as well. I look at Juwan Jennings as more of a Juwan Johnson as a guy who is more of a pass threat. Like, he is the guy that he's not going to be the blocking tight end that you need to kind of do that. And I also look at it the same way when you had Jimmy Graham. When you brought him in here as to be that red zone threat but never utilized him, which is kind of just strange. It's like, why would you bring him back if you're not going to use him? And that's whole usage stuff that I'm sure if Clint Kubiak got a hand of that and go, oh, look at this threat we have in the red zone, maybe we could do that. But certainly, yeah, if you're looking, think 49ers. Again, we'll use that as a template. And you have someone like a Greg Kittle, like that is what you kind of want, is somebody who can be athletic, but also just a run blocking kind of thing. And you're not
able to block downfield
and block downfield as well. And I think you could be in the market to search for that. Certainly, you hope that Foster Moreau was going to be something that you could do that, but at this point, it's just kind of like, all right, maybe you're going to have to go find a tight end like that to kind of fit that system.
And you don't know what's going to happen with Jimmy Graham. Whether he's going to come back or not, whether he wants to come back or not after what happened last season. Again, how little he was used, and again, of course, he's rowing a boat or something.
He's going around the world doing that thing. More power to him. I mean, that is impressive.
Right.
But yeah, and we don't know what his intentions are in terms of wanting to come back and being underutilized. But at least just from my perception of how he was this season, I think there was more of a just an appreciation that he was back in the league and just back with the team that originally he had most of his success with. So I think there's just a calmness that he's probably satisfied that he's back, and if he wanted to play more, great.
Right.
Obviously, he's a competitor, so I'm sure he wasn't really too pleased with how he was used last year. But certainly, with the Jimmy Graham situation, if you brought him back, I would expect him to be used better than he was last year.
I would too, especially in this offense.
Right.
Okay. Running back, we talked about it. I think that may be a position where they have to upgrade a bit. Again, maybe a player in the draft, maybe a free agent. Benjamin's a free agent. Again, you talk about the rookie they had last year. Again, looked good toward the end of the season, but again wasn't was injured most of the season. Do you think that's a position they need to look at? Now remember, look. The draft, they don't have a third or fourth round pick. You'll probably get running backs a little bit later on in the draft if you're looking for that. Is that a position where, considering you don't know what's going to happen with Kamara, that you may want to look to upgrade some, even if it is, again, to bring in someone that can really start off as maybe a backup?
There was we did a position of needs at the end of the season on 4th down on 4. So the two areas of need, and I think it was we did it with Doug, with Seth, with Ross Jackson and myself. So 3 of the 4 of us, our first need was defensive line, defensive end, something like that. My second one was running back. Okay. And there are, because of the questions with Kamara.
Yes.
And just so much, all right, I want to protect that investment, or I want to protect him because, again, I'm always like, you got that 30 to 29, protect him or whatever. Do you need a second running back? You just need somebody who could provide a little more pop. Now, Kendre Miller showed that when he was in the year, but for the most part this season, this past season, he wasn't healthy.
Right.
And that started from camp when he was still recovering from that knee thing. And he wasn't healthy as well, but you see the burst that he could have for this offense.
Agreed.
If he's in there. I still feel like that's an area of need. Like, if I were them, in this, you're picking up a running back somewhere. And I was a big last year going like, man, if they could somehow get Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, that was my guy last year. And obviously you saw what he did this season with the Detroit Lions because he provided that pop and also could be
almost a Kamara clone.
Right, he is a Kamara clone. That was his comp, coming out from Alabama. But I still think that running back is a position where you just need somebody, again, to provide some production when Kamara can't go in those situations where, if it's a bell cow type running back or somebody who, again, has that versatility like Kamara, that's what you want in this offense there. And I think when you're seeing them cycle through so many running backs who they're bringing in, who they brought in, it just goes, hey, draft one and again, do it in later round, but draft one. But certainly you have to come out of this draft with a running back, in my opinion.
But that's why I was a Tajay Spears guy last year.
Right.
I thought he would be perfect in this offense, and a guy that has a lot of the attributes that Kamara has as well.
Right, and this is the thing. It was, Tajay would have been perfect here. Right. The Saints had no interest in Spears.
None.
No
interest. I don't know if that goes
in
back to the knee situation, but yet again, Miller had a knee problem at TCU as well.
Right, and for whatever reason on their board, they had they had Kendre up there, but Tajay, like any dreams of, like, he had conversations with Saints personnel, but any dreams of everybody thinking Spears was the hometown kid was going to play with the Saints, that was never on the board.
But look how productive he was with
and how great he was with,
He was very productive.
Right.
Let's look, the most important position is quarterback. And you mentioned something as we started off. Derek Carr's had so many offensive coordinates, been in so many offensive systems since he's been a pro. One of the things he came in last year, he talked about working in the offseason, getting the offense down, and at least he gave us the indication during training camp that he pretty much had it down. By the time we got into the season, we saw receivers down on the same page, quarterback on the same page. This ramp up has to be quick this year, okay? I mean, there are a lot of people on the hot seat here. A lot of fans are upset about what's been going on the last few years. They got to get to the playoffs. Carr's got to really be able to acclimate himself and be able to run this offense very, very quickly, in my opinion. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I remember asking him during training camp when he didn't play in those preseason games, just get the live bullets, and he said, you know, like, well, I'm a 10-year vet. Basically, I really don't need to do that. But it's like, you have a new team and you've got new weapons. Like, if I were him, like, even if you played one series, just get into there, you know, throw the live bullets, get those reps in there, because you could see when they started the season, they weren't clicking as, you know, how much they were versus at the end of the year when, you know, finally, not only was he healthy, but others, you know, like they figured it out in terms of, you know, those connections they had with Chris Olave, you know, Rashid Shaheed, you know, finding different, you know, ways to kind of, you know, move this offense. Derek has to take that next step in this new system. I always say it's going to be difficult because, again, you have yet another new offensive coordinator that you're bringing in, that you have to learn a kind of new system and figure out what you're doing. But at least this offseason, he has a rapport with all the receivers that he has, particularly with Chris Olave, Shaheed, Jawan. Like, there's a lot of, you know, things that could speed up that process in terms of getting into the season quicker and having this offense, you know, get to a better start than it did last season. In terms of, if you wanted to look big picture, is this the quarterback that should help you win this division? Yes, it should be the guy, because, I mean, hey, you're paying him like he is the guy.
That's
and
true.
I know the restructure helps, and I think anybody who was looking at the restructure and before it going, man, they will be off the hook if they got rid of him after 2024 and kind of cut bait. But it was never, because of the way that they structure these contracts, they're going to restructure and do it, and this is how they build it out.
They put the $30 million base out there for a reason, so they could restructure.
Right, and that's the plan. This is how it always sets up with all the players they have there. So any like dream of going, hey, like after 2 years, they're going to get rid of him because of the way the contract's set up. No, he is their guy for at least the foreseeable future. If I were the Saints still, I would look at, again, a quarterback and possibly if one fell down. Now, I know it fall to you in the first round. Now, I always find this funny because the one that was the least projected, now most mock drafts have them going for a tackle, but initially when they were looking at quarterback in the first round, and that one name that came up was Bo Nix that would fall to them at that position. I always found it funny because if you ask any LSU person who's an LSU and a Saints fan, hey, Bo Nix could be on the Saints, they say, no, I don't want any part of that, because Auburn has scarred them for life of having Bo Nix on this team, and it's understandably so because, you know, he figured things out when he got to Oregon. So that's why he's up where he's at. But a lot of people will be like, well, you looked at what he did at Auburn. He's not going to be that. So there are a reason why there's probably 5 or 6 quarterbacks in this draft that will have a significant impact, and you're going to get them in the first 3 rounds. So I know what the Saints have been doing the last 3 years, trying those flyers on those late round guys, maybe an undrafted guy, maybe that'll pan out. More likely than not, the odds are going to tell you it's not going to pan out. So even if you don't do it in this draft, you've got to figure out somewhere, like, you know, you're going to be picking in that 14-15 range. Like, the only way you're going to get one of those top-tier quarterbacks to transition to the next one is you're going to have to trade up and get assets. And right now, they're not in a position to do that. So you're going to have to look maybe 1 or 2 drafts down the road and then find that quarterback. Because, I mean, there's plenty in this draft. It's just at that position where they're at the time, before they did the Derek Carr restructure, I think most of those quarterbacks, as we see in every draft, they're going to be overvalued. So that means that the first, so guys that you feel like are top 10, maybe there's 3. It's going to be about 6 that are going to be taken because, again, you hit on one of those quarterbacks, you set up your franchise for the next 10, 12 years.
Which helps the Saints if they are looking for an offensive tackle, because offensive tackle is a very strong position in this draft, and maybe one of those top tackles falls to them if, again, there is a run on quarterbacks, like there could be. To me, and I've talked about it on the radio show and a little bit on this program as well, I think, again, they're devoid of picks in that 3rd and 4th round. And again, with the need to get younger, I can see them not so much trading picks for trading this year. I could see them trading out of picks next year to be able to get those picks for this year. And everybody keeps talking about the Lattimore trade. Well, if they trade Lattimore, they got to trade him after June 1st because of the $45 million dead money hit. So again, that would mean that any picks they would get for Lattimore would be from next year's draft. So to me, I could see them going out and trying to parlay next year's picks into this year's draft, and then trying to be able to fill that in if they do trade Lattimore next year, because the meat of the draft is 2nd, 3rd, 4th round.
Oh, is this right? Those mid rounds where you're going to get those guys that potentially, like, they're your building blocks that you put in there. You get it for cheap, and you get guys that, you know, are the foundation for what you're building with the team. The Lattimore trade thing is fascinating.
Do you think they will?
See, when I was listening to, like, I always feel like it makes sense to do it at this point, especially with how, you know, Paulson Adebo played this year. You had Isaac Adam, that was a surprise there. Alontae Taylor has taken strides in the second year. So you feel better about that cornerback position.
Adam is an unrestricted free agent.
You do. So listening to the way Dennis Allen was talking about Lattimore, it feels like it's going to be a decision they're going to wrestle with probably this whole offseason, whether or not to trade Marshawn Lattimore. Being the defensive guy that he's never going to be like, you know, you can never have too many good defensive backs.
Agreed.
And that's always been the kind of the philosophy of Dennis Allen. They're going to wrestle with that. There has to be a good offer on the table, I think, for them to decide we're going to move on from, we feel comfortable enough to move on to Marshawn Lattimore because we've got this amount, you know, whatever they have in the trade to get him. They have to like the value they're getting from Marshawn Lattimore. But I don't think I think it makes sense, but I don't think that decision is going to be taken lightly or as easy as one may think. They're going to wrestle with that all offseason. Well, and you got the tenor from Dennis Allen yesterday talking about that.
You got $45 million of dead money that you're going to have to spend over 2 years. Again, on top of now look, they got a reprieve this year with $13 million more in the salary cap than what was expected. That really helps them. But again, when you look at Lattimore, again, the biggest thing he's had is injuries, but he's productive. He shuts down one side of the field.
Yes.
And as I mentioned before, if you're going to move him, you better make sure you get him under contract, who again played well and really helped his stock in free agency.
Yeah, you have to make sure all those pieces are in place before you make a move to deal Lattimore. And then with the injury issues, I know it's been 2 years, but it's like that first year injury was kind of freaky because it was just a hit that was a kidney laceration that. I mean, that happens. You're playing a violent sport. Collisions are going to happen, and that, you know. And then, of course, it was that ankle he rolled up this past season, and just, you know,
I think the frustration is him not getting back on the field.
I think it's him and Michael Thomas. Those are the two guys that I think this team has been very frustrated in terms of injury, where it's like, you know, some guys are getting back faster. Why are you guys taking a little longer? I think there's a frustration about those two particular coming back from injuries. Now one will probably not be here next year in Michael Thomas, but the Marshawn Lattimore one, that is one where, again, I think that decision, they're going to wrestle with that for this whole entire offseason.
He is your most tradable commodity.
He is.
Okay, but the problem, and then you have depth at that position, which again means you can trade him to be able to get picks, but again, you're eating dead money. $45 million of dead money that you'll have to do as well. All right, before we move on and go to our break, when you look at needs and going into this draft, going into free agency, what do you think is the priority here? Again, because offensive tackles are very expensive in free agency, so you probably have to do that in the draft. What are the top 3 priorities in your opinion they have to fill in this offseason?
I would say wide receiver.
Okay.
I think they need a I would say possession.
Draft wide, because this is a very good draft for wide receiver.
Right, and you could probably go for that. So maybe, but if they don't, you could address that in free agency. I would say wide receiver. I think linebacker is another need where it's like if DeMario, he's been great.
Right, but if something.
But outside of that, and Werner,
and Werner's always been sketchy in terms of staying on the field.
Linebacker is probably another thing.
I love a guy that's in Tampa right now, but I don't think they can afford him, which is Devin White.
Right.
I think he'll end up in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think he's going to be back in Tampa, but to me, he's a great heir apparent for a guy like either Demario Davis, or if there's an injury there.
Right. And you
don't bring that guy in to sit though.
You don't. And
I don't know if they can afford a guy like that.
They won't, especially with. They'll have a little bit more flexibility probably in free agency, but not where they're going to
want to sign a hometown discount type.
Right.
Contract.
And most guys are not going to do that.
Especially not in this contract.
No.
And this is going to be his first time really kind of testing free agency.
Right. Those would be my 2. If I had to pick a third one, I mean, we could see some changes at the safety position. We could see.
Is Howden an heir apparent thing? Because I don't think May will be back.
May will not be. I don't think May will be back either.
I think he's going to cap casualty.
I think Howden. I think they're high on Howden. It's just whatever happened last season in terms of maybe what defensively they wanted to run and his usage as well. Maybe they'll figure that out in the offseason. I think that, and I will say bigger picture with a lot of these guys that we were kind of like, why didn't they do this? Why didn't do that? You have to look at, we've had this conversation with culture, and we've had this thing about accountability with this team. And I think that this locker room, this team probably wasn't as tight as it needed to be to move forward. Now, I don't say it's player relationships.
Right.
I think it's a lot player coaches.
I think the survey said that.
Yeah, the survey said that, and you saw that.
Right.
I mean, Dennis Allen getting a B- on his thing.
There were only 3 coaches that were lower than him, and all 3 had 5.
Right, and there's a lot of stuff where it's, there's probably stories that you could add speculation to that maybe I wouldn't like speculate on it, but from the evidence and talking to a lot of these players all season, kind of just seeing the dynamic of a lot of these things, and then you add that on there, it's that relationship that needs to be fixed there. So, a guy like Jordan Howden who's a rookie, maybe there's, you follow the players one way, you go coaches one way, whatever. Maybe that's what kept you off the field. I think Jordan Howden's a good player as well. And maybe that's where you can kind of transition if you left with May.
And then you still got an aging Tyrann Mathieu.
And you have Tyrann Mathieu, so maybe that's something you address in the draft as well. Maybe free agency if you go younger there. But yeah, that safety position where I'm, there's going to be some change there as well this year. And I think Howden is the next guy up, but don't be surprised if they make another move or
You mentioned
or get another
defensive
guy.
line a little bit earlier. Is that free agent going after defensive linemen, or is that in the draft?
I would say the ends maybe, maybe your rushers, because you need to find a pass rusher that fits this modern NFL. And maybe, you look at Jared Verse at Florida State, a guy that I've watched last 2 years, being a Florida State alum, watching him. I mean, he is.
Some people think he's the perfect fit for this roster.
Right, and then the Penn State defensive end as well. These guys are 255, which is not what the Saints draft at end. But
Ireland said that he was going away from those measurables.
But if you're going away from those measurables and you're getting faster speed, because again, you don't have standstill quarterbacks in the NFL anymore. Everybody can move. Everyone's got some mobility. So your ends have to have a little bit of mobility. Those are 2 guys where if you wanted to take a flyer on a defensive rush end, that's who you would go after. But you could also see them in free agency maybe address that as well.
Hopefully they're not going to put all their eggs in Peyton Turner's basket again, because that's
that we saw how's that's worked out, right?
Ricardo Lecompte of WWL Channel 4 TV Sports is our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. When we come back, we'll start with Pels, and then we'll jump into the college game. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Stay tuned.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Ricardo Lecompte of Channel 4 Sports is our guest. Ricardo, let's talk Pels. 35-25. They're now 6th in the West, first in the Southwest Division. Tough game last night against the Pacers. Look, I don't want to make excuses for the Pelicans. They get in at 5 o'clock in the morning. Again, they don't get into the hotel rooms till almost 6 because of airplane problems. They got down by 40 early, and they couldn't catch up. There were several times they got within a couple of baskets of maybe tying it, but they never could get over it. But every game is so meaningful now down the stretch here. Now you have 22 left, 2-3 since the All-Star break. You're 9 of your last 13. And even though you're playing Eastern Conference foes right now, you got to start stacking some wins here, especially again as tight as the West is. Give me your thoughts on where you think this team is post All-Star break, if you think this team is gelling, and again, what you think they look like going into this really sprint to the finish now.
Yeah, and I think they're a top 6 team in the West. I still think they are.
I agree. Now
we're going to see them, the Suns, and the Mavs all shuffling around 5, 6, 7. It's going to one night the Pels will be 5, another night they'll be 7. It's just because those teams are probably right now, if you put all those 3, they're about in that same tier. I think the top 4 in the West separated, like those are going to be one of your top
Yes.
4 like title favorites if you wanted to break it down. Maybe, you know, I wouldn't really put the Thunder and the T-Wolves. I put them in a kind of separate category, but certainly Denver, the Clippers, like those are your 2 teams I feel like could get out of the West. Then again, it's that 5, 6, 7 where they're around, and I still think they're a top 6 team. I think they're a solid team when you got all your pieces clicking together. And I think this is where the frustration comes with some fans when you're watching this team, where you're like, man, why can't they play that like that every night?
Right.
Well, it's a team still trying to figure it out. Because I think from now, when you've had the big 3 with Zion, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum now, I think it's at 43 games together on the court this season compared to last season when they only played 10 games together on the court. So they're still trying to figure things out in terms of where all these pieces are going. I think Zion right now is quietly having, you know, his best season because, again, it's all the injury stuff he's had to deal with, not having the availability out there. But in terms of what he has to do with this offense, in terms of now he's got the ball more when they're playing point Zion and able to make those right plays, still being able to do what he does, dominate inside, score at will in those acrobatic shots that he's getting off, those floaters, those things off the thing, his touch around the rim, and still being able to do that and dominate night in and night out against anybody. It's impressive how Zion is taking that next step.
I agree.
Brandon Ingram trying to figure out his own in terms of being that guy that in late game situations, can he have the ball score when things break down? You need to have a player like that, especially when you get to the postseason where he's got to create his own shot. Can he do that consistently, you know, coming down the stretch here and in the postseason? And I like a veteran guard like CJ McCollum who can get his shot, be that outside scorer, consistently outside shooting. He's shooting, I think, 43% from 3. With him and Herb, how they're shooting together, you know, shooting the 3 ball. Certainly, you like the pieces that they have here. I think this little stretch right now where, you know, they're going to get a few days off after they play the Pacers on Friday once again. And again, that Pacers matchup, they're second in the NBA in pace.
Yes.
Assists to turnovers are second in there. Tyrese Halliburton is a 10-plus assist guy, and you certainly saw that when the Pels got it to within 3. What happened those next 2 trips down? It was Tyrese Halliburton at the point creating a play and actually making 2 good passes for them to kind of stretch out that lead. Again, I think the Pels are going to have to win some of these games down the stretch where if it's, you know, you're playing a good team, you're going to have to steal one. And they're going to have to do that certainly, you know, when they're playing the likes of the Pacers, when they play the Heat again, when they, you know, like you're going to have to kind of steal these ones. But certainly I feel better about this team than probably the last 2 seasons. And again, I think they can finish in the top 6, but they're going to have to steal, again, some of these games.
To your point about Zion, to me, it's on the defensive side of the ball. You know, his ability to be able to block shots off the ball. Again, we're seeing him now moving better than we've seen him any time in New Orleans. Maybe the first part of last season before he got injured, where you're seeing him going after steals. You're seeing him getting into the passing lanes. Again, he's being more of a willing rebounder, instead of rebounding just his own shot. I think that's the biggest.
I think he's in basketball shape now.
No, he is.
And that was a big thing. And of course, you know, those comments that you heard Stephen A. make, you know, that was somebody who had not watched Pelicans games for the last 3 months. It's basically highlights or just from what you heard because like you could tell the difference from that first 20 games or so to now. You're like, all right, like he's rounded into form. He's in shape. And certainly, yes, I think defensively, when you're seeing how he helps off and you can get those, you know, help side blocks and when he, you know, on pick and rolls and he's switching and he's getting down and guarding, like he is making more of I would say an improvement there defensively.
I would agree. I think there are 2 things we have to look at as you look down the stretch here into the playoffs, especially when you get into these series. Number 1, again, is physicality. I think the Heat took it to them again and showed that they're not a physical team. I think the Bulls did the same thing on the next night. I think you go back to Draymond Green last year with the Warriors when they had a little dust up. Draymond Green talking them down again during the All-Star break. I think the Pels, again, maybe just lack toughness.
And this is why a guy like Jonas Valanciunas is so big. And I knew a lot of people wanted to get...
And Najee Marshall.
And Najee Marshall. Those type of guys are like why they weren't dealt at the trade deadline. Now, granted, when you're hearing like maybe DeJounte Murray, maybe like you got to find an athletic big. The whole athletic big thing, it's like they don't grow on trees.
That's
not everybody can have them. There's probably maybe 5 or 6 guys in the NBA that could do all the things that you would like to have your 5 do in today's NBA. Right, exactly. Like there's only a few guys. But when you get into the playoffs and things slow down, you need guys like a Jonas Valanciunas that can defend, rebound. Body up somebody that they need to do. That's where it's going to help them when the game slows down because that's what's going to end up happening. And to your point about that toughness, it's you're going to start playing playoff games now. So games are going to slow down outside of the Pacers again, who will run.
That's an anomaly.
But when you're getting into games like the Heat, when you're getting into those close, you're going to have to just show a little bit more toughness. Now the Heat are battle tested, so they are used to those kind of things. These are lessons that the Pelicans are learning, and I expect them they could get better in that terms of toughness when the game does slow down.
To your point, things slow down. Will Point Zion work in the playoffs? Do you need a point guard when you're in the half court, things are slowing down? That's going to be one of the questions going forward. Can you play the point forward position in the playoffs?
I think you can, but Zion's game is limited in terms of when you have those half court sets and he's got to do it. One of the things that I wish that he would work on and improve is having a little pull-up, having a little floater, having a little touch.
He had a 3 last night.
Right, he did have a 3, and I saw him practicing on that when they were coming back from the All-Star break. He was just shooting threes, and I'm like, all right. But there are some things where, like, if you're going to have the ball and people are going to crash, especially are going to sink and going to crash and basically, just fall back. If you have a little pull-up, 18, 16-footer, Zion would be unstoppable because then you have to account that into his weaponry along with all the stuff he can do, either driving or dishing when you collapse everything. So it can work. It's just I don't think Zion's game is at the point where he can, in those playoff type situations, he can completely take over again.
Right. And to me, again, when things tighten up, do you need that point guard to facilitate? And that'll be one of the questions going forward. Let's shift gears to college basketball. I just want to go, I'm not going to go too deep into the teams that don't have a chance at postseason, but I do want to mention Tulane 13-14, 4-11, 11th in the American Athletic Conference, lost to North Texas last night, 80-76. UNO's having a really tough year, 8-20, 3-12 in the South, and that's last. LSU all of a sudden has come alive on men's basketball. Beat Georgia the other night, again in a tight game, 67-66. They're 15-13. They're 7-8 in the SEC. That's for as 8th place. But they are in terms of quad wins. They have 4 quad wins, which is second in the SEC. Playing the best basketball of the season. Of course, we know they beat South Carolina, Kentucky. They got Vandy, Arkansas, and Missouri to finish out the season before they go to the SEC tournament. Most people think that maybe they got a shot at the NIT. What do you think about that? What do you think about Matt McMahon's team?
I certainly like they're playing better under Matt McMahon, and that's one of those things where it's like, all right, like, and Kim Mulkey made a great point about this, where you're looking at, like, there's a lot of result-oriented things that we look at.
Sure.
So when you're looking at, all right, what's their record? Well, they're not doing stuff, or they're not winning the games that they should be. But you've seen steady improvement in this team since Matt McMahon took over. And you're seeing now it's starting to kind of come to fruition where it's like, all right, now they're getting these wins where they, go on the road and beat a South Carolina team. They figure out a play at the end to beat Kentucky, and it feels good. And then you could tell also, again, there's some inconsistencies because then they turn around and get beat by 20 by Mississippi State. Right. So, yes, they're right there in the running of a possible NIT, and it certainly helps that, again, you play in one of the toughest conferences in the country. This closing stretch, where you just beat Arkansas, and you have Missouri, who hasn't had the best season, and you just got a good win against Georgia. They can close strong here, and then again, you're in that top 8 in there. You don't have to play on the first day,
right?
So that helps.
That's huge.
So it makes it more of a feasible run to get through the SEC tournament than having to play on that first day, and certainly finishing in the top 8. You're just outside. You're not in the top 4 for that double bye, but at least you have a chance to kind of put something together, and certainly have some momentum. Where, hey, if the NIT has to look at possibly putting LSU in there, there's a possibility.
Right. Well, look, Lunardi had them as their first 4 out after they beat Kentucky. When they lost to Tech, was it Mississippi State?
Mississippi State.
When they lost to Mississippi State, Again, they dropped out. As I mentioned, again, with Vandy, Arkansas, Missouri, there's a chance to be able to close with maybe 3 wins.
And then get a win in the SEC against a good team.
At least 1 or 2 in the SEC. So maybe then at that point, there's an outside shot. More than likely, they get the automatic bye to the NIT. One of those automatic buys to the NIT, which is huge for a team that 2 years ago, everyone abandoned the program after Will Wade was fired. Ron Hunter and Tulane, expected to be much better than they are this year, but they have 13 and 14. They've had some struggles.
Yeah, and you feel like they just, they're playing tough in these games. I mean, even this loss to North Texas the other night, it was close. But it's like in certain games, like you see the runs where they bury themselves into a double-digit hole and they fight and claw back. It's one of those where they can't put themselves in those situations, and that's why they've, haven't been able to, pull out some of these games that feel like they're winnable games, and now they're in like the bottom 4 of the American, which means they're playing on day 1 of that American Athletic Conference tournament. It's a shame too, because they got that win over Memphis, and you felt like, all right, here's the trajectory of the program. It's gonna start peaking. And then all of a sudden, it was like the bottom just fell out, and it was like it's almost one of those like, wow, you didn't ride any of that momentum to kind of do that.
They got offensive play. They can shoot the basketball.
They can.
They just don't play good defense. They don't stop the ball going to the rim.
Yeah, that's one of the big problems. I also think the American is a decent conference too. When you've added, you still have FAU, you still have SMU in their final season.
Historic. Going back way to the Metro.
It's crazy. South Florida is having their best season here. Like there's a possibility they're going to be a tournament team and win this American Athletic Conference, and no one saw South Florida coming to be one of the top teams in the league. It's just a shame because it felt like Tulane was going to be that team.
Me too. I thought so.
But again, they're in that bottom 4. One of the best things about the tournament time is that you can erase everything you did in the regular season and do that. Tulane baseball showed you that last season.
Doubt. True.
So that's the thing. If you can get them to at least be playing better going into that tournament, anything can happen in conference championships.
UNO's in a tough spot. I mean, they don't have money. They don't have the NIL money to compete. Facilities. They got a great arena. But again, Coach Sless is going to have a tough time in the way things are now in terms of college athletics, because guys are looking to get paid, right? So we'll see how that plays out. Hopefully, again, he will survive.
And I was going to say one thing with the Southland. Obviously, we know Will Wade and McNeese are running away with.
And what did they do? NIL brought it. I mean,
Right, they did that. Now, if we get to the conference tournament, and they're expected, there are 2 teams that possibly could knock them out, and I think it is Nichols and Southeastern. And Southeastern the only team that's beaten McNeese in conference play so far. So if you wanted again, Nichols is having a great year as well. Those are the 2 teams that could threaten them, but again, McNeese should end up winning that conference. You would think they should, but again, anything can happen in conference tournaments, right?
No doubt. LSU women 23-4, 10-3, second in the SEC. They're 9th in the AP now. They've won 5 in a row. They're at Georgia, Kentucky at home on Sunday. That's senior day for Angel Reese and Haley Van Lith. Your thoughts on them defending their title?
I think they have a good chance of getting to the Final Four. I think they're playing better than what I saw them when they played against South Carolina. That South Carolina game, what that kind of, and hopefully what they learned from that is that, you've got to keep Angel Reese on the floor, which means that, she's got to be smarter in terms of not fouling out in those situations, because at that 4-minute mark when she fouled out, after that, South Carolina went on that run, and not having Angel Reese on the floor is big. Angel Reese is so important for that team, especially just because it's your best player, and just having your best player on the psychology-wise, like psychologically, it just feels good just to have your best player on the court, but also just somebody down there who can get rebounds, who can be tough in those half-court sets. That kind of helps. I think Haley Van Lith is playing much better ball than what she was at the beginning of the season. And I think she's kind of figuring out that role of not just being the primary scorer like she was at Louisville. When she came to LSU and she said this is one of the things that she wanted to do and learn under Kim Mulkey was play more of that point guard. I think she's finding that good blend between doing both.
Agreed.
And it just took her some time to do that. The biggest question for me is just it's going to be depth in terms of what are you rolling off, when you're going about 5, 6, 7 deep, because you can't play all 5 of your starters all 40 minutes there. Flau'jae is going to be Flau'jae. She's going to do that. But who's going to be off the bench there? I think De La Rosa has been playing well. Another big that you can throw in there. And Poa's got to be key. She's got to be another one when you don't have like a Samai Smith who's been injured.
Right. Injuries have really hurt.
Right. Kateri Poe is no longer on the team.
Right.
Having somebody off the bench like Poa who has experience winning a national championship, she's got to also play better coming off the bench there. But I like what's kind of, taking place with this team.
Right.
And they're now rounding into form where you're like, okay, I didn't feel good about them defending their title maybe a month ago, but as they're coming down the stretch here, maybe they are one of those teams that could be dangerous, that could get possibly to Cleveland.
I agree with you. Let's talk baseball. We're in the infant stages of the season, so it's hard to really put your finger on where they are. But LSU looks really, really good. 8-1. They beat Rice 16-4 last night. It's going to be a big weekend for them. They're in the Astros Foundation Classic. Texas, ULL, Texas State are going to be in there. Texas is going to be a big game. Look, Louisiana Lafayette always gives LSU problems, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. What's your thoughts on the Tigers?
I like their pieces. I really do. I think pitching, they've got a plethora of pitchers to throw out there. It's going to take some time to figure out who's going to be your Friday, Saturday, Sunday starter. I still like Luke Holman, who has been fantastic his first 2 outings for the Tigers. I feel like he's going to end up being the Friday starter when it's all said and done. Thatcher probably will move from Friday to Saturday. And Thatcher's got good stuff. He's probably still just kind of figuring it out right now. And then that Sunday thing is up for grabs. They have a number of guys they can throw in there. We had this discussion yesterday that maybe Cade Anderson, the guy from St. Paul's.
Right.
I mean, he looks like, what he did against Rice and just the potential he has as a freshman probably maybe on Sunday. That could be an option there. But certainly they have a lot more pitching, a lot more left-handed pitching that they needed. And certainly they are just tinkering right now. And that's a good problem to have if you're Jay Johnson in terms of, I've got all this pitching. I could throw them out early in the season, figure out before we get into the SEC play who are going to be my guys, how I want to kind of construct things once I get through these starters, who I want in middle relief, who I kind of want as my 2 or 3 closers. It's a good problem to have. As you're looking at this lineup, you're still trying to figure out. Obviously, you don't have like a Dylan Cruz in there where you can kind of get a spark. Guy's going to bat over 400 and get on base there. But I like what I've seen from Jared Jones right now. That is your pop right there. Tommy White's going to slowly get back in. Again, remember he had shoulder surgery in this offseason. It just takes reps. He missed all of fall. So you just got to get plate appearance after plate appearance and get that timing back. Once that timing's back, now you've got your 2 big bats in there, and then you'll see how you kind of surround over there. One freshman who's in the lineup that really has impressed me is Stephen Milam, the infielder, the shortstop, who's drawing comps to Alex Bregman only because they're New Mexico guys.
Yes.
But Milam is a guy who consistently can get on base, who can hit. Not the biggest guy. Like I make this joke, he seems like he's a Palmineri type of guy that they recruited, but he is everything else that he does well. He's been a freshman so far in this early part that I'm in like, all right, if he can consistently hit and get on base, and you add what he can do defensively, that's great. And you have another option outside of Michael Braswell also at short that you can kind of roll in that infield. But LSU has so much talent that they could still tinker around and figure out what they want to do by the time they hit SEC.
Monero used to do that all the time in midweek games as well. All right, Tulane is 4-4. They got swept by Cal Irvine last weekend. They beat UNO in the first game of the Pelican Cup on Tuesday. Your thoughts about the Greenies?
I wanted to see what they would do against UC Irvine, and when you're looking at all 3 of those days, it was just that one inning that got away from them, and that was kind of what was led to their downfall and ended up getting swept by the Anteaters. Tulane, they basically have a whole new, all new faces of staff in terms of what they had in the lineup and what they've had in the bullpen. It's still, the jury's still out to see how good they really are. Certainly, I'm a fan of T.O. Banks. I think he's when he gets into, he's going to be your guy. He's your star. And again, I always go, when you have those stars psychologically on the field, you go, we always have a chance. If he's at the plate, we have a chance to win stuff. And certainly, in that game on Saturday, he had that 2-run homer to tie it at 3. That kind of, we were like, all right, maybe this is kind of but it gave him some juice and some life again when it looked like, UC Irvine was dominating the entire time. Jury's still out on that. Again, they're also kind of tinkering what they're going to do with their weekend staff. But certainly there's a lot more work to be done. But again, Tulane in a better spot this time than they were last year, because it took them, 6 or 7 series before they won their first series. So they have already won against a Northwestern team. You play tough against UC Irvine. Let's see what you do this weekend as well.
UNO is 4-4. They beat Evansville 2-3 last weekend. They lost to Tulane in the Pelican Cup. Your thoughts on Blake Dean's team?
Yeah, I think Blake as well. They've had a lot of injuries in the fall. That was kind of what they had to get back to, get those guys healthy. Once we get to see them as a healthy team, we'll see what they can do. Certainly, they think very highly of them in the Southland Conference. Obviously, Nichols is going to be the favorite.
Yes.
But again, once they kind of get healthy and they kind of get going, I think that's a team that could, possibly be a dangerous team in the Southland.
I do want to mention again, spring football starts. LSU will start on the 5th of March. They'll have 15 practices, and then they'll go into April. Their spring game is on the 13th. Tulane begins their spring on March the 12th. Their spring game will be on the 20th. They got their first practice will be the 14th, the 16th, the 19th, the 21st, and there are 10 more practices in April. Also, the NOLA Gold getting ready to open up their season against the Old Glory DC. That's 3 o'clock on Saturday at the Gold Mine. Your thoughts on the Gold?
It's been a tough couple of seasons. Last 2 seasons for them were, I remember 2 seasons ago they finished in last, and then they kind of improved a little bit better. We'll see what this season is in store for the NOLA Gold. It's one of those things where now you have a lot of movement around in the league. I know that Rugby ATL is no longer that the rival has moved as well. So some new faces, some new places as well. But certainly, I always go if the NOLA Gold can, you win a couple of these matches kind of early off and get some momentum. We'll see if they can kind of get that steam rolling into some momentum, because it's been a tough go these last seasons.
It really has. And of course, again, finally, I want to talk a little bit. We got about 2 minutes left. Your thoughts on again, Harold Perkins being moved to the inside linebacker position on this defense that Brian Kelly talked about the other day?
Well, Brian Kelly feels very confident that that is where he's going to be slotted in the NFL. He would be dangerous in there. I know everybody's like, put him on the outside, get him rushing.
See ball, get ball, see quarterback, get quarterback.
Let him do that. But there has to be a reason, and again, I'm not going to doubt a guy who's won so many games and knows talent. He feels confident in putting him in the inside. Maybe we'll see if it works out as well. Again, I personally, all of us think he's better on the outside. But if he feels like he is a guy who could be an inside linebacker and that is his future in football, then we have to kind of let it play out. There's going to be struggles. And certainly we saw that last season.
Year.
Exactly. So now that he has a year under his belt, now he'll get a spring and all this, and summer workouts, and then the fall to kind of transition to that. Now, certainly Harold Perkins is athletic and talented enough to play pretty much anywhere on the field. But again, that's a position where he has to work out. There's things he has to do better in that inside position. We'll see. We'll just have to see and trust that Brian Kelly knows what he's doing in terms of evaluating.
They put a lot of eggs in Blake Baker's basket here to be able to make that transition for him. As far as Tulane goes, we had about a minute left. All these 5 stars that they brought on the transfer portal, people are really excited about Summerall. You got to admit.
Wait, did you say 5 stars in Tulane?
I did say that.
No, you didn't. No.
That's incredible, right?
What?
Right.
No, it is.
It's amazing. It really is.
And it's not like it's a 5-star retread.
No.
This is a guy who lost his job out to Bo Nix. At Oregon, and you saw how that offense took off. So you're really excited about Ty Thompson going, all right, you actually got a legitimate quarterback in here, a guy who was highly rated in high school, and now he's going to be on campus with other pieces that you put with Mario Williams and Shaz Preston. And then it's like, okay, you have to, if you're Tulane, you have to be, John Summerall, considering how early he had to come in, figure out everything else, and hit the recruiting trail like he did to kind of salvage this class and even improve it. It is impressive so far. It's a good impression to start if you're a Tulane fan of what they were able to do.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I'm excited about Tulane. I'm excited about LSU, seeing what's going to happen this year. And, of course, Again, we'll see what happens with the basketball as well. Ricardo, thanks so much as always for joining us. Always great to have you on the program.
Always a pleasure, Eric.
Thank you so much. Ricardo Lecompte, Channel 4's WLAE-TV Sports. All right. So many ways to catch our program now. The QR code on your screen. Click on the QR code to take you right to my website, ericasher.com, or the WLAE-TV YouTube channel. Remember, I say it every week, set your DVR. You'll never miss the program between Pelican Sports Television and WLE, all the rebroadcasts. Set your DVR. You'll catch it every single week. All right, don't forget, I'm on the radio, 106.1 FM. That's weekdays 4 to 6. You can listen live at ericasher.com, iHeartRadio up, TuneIn Radio up, our digital platforms, Anchor, Spotify is where you can find our podcasts. I want to thank the underwriters who make this show possible. Each and every one of those underwriters, please support our underwriters. And of course, want to thank the staff here at WLAE-TV. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, also again, Jane Wright, Logan Graffia, Danielle Wick, Alex Chacon, and the best director on the planet, William Hill. For Ricardo Lecompte, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.